is not true. So when I got older, it was really easy for me to not believe the media. So fast forward, you know, I'm on YouTube being fucking Ali Shakur and super pro-black, and I was a fucking idiot. I'll be honest. I had a lot of knowledge, but I had a lot of vitriol and anger and passion. And then this dude, Handy Mayhem, started following me, and he copped the first Third Eye Jedi. So like Unc was buying my merch. So I was like, oh, who's this dude that's fucking with me? So I just followed him back, and we got cool. And then I saw this thing about like black conservative. I'm like, what the fuck is a black conservative? I didn't know what a liberal was. I didn't know what a conservative was. I didn't know what a Democrat was. I didn't know what any of these things were. So he introduced me to this whole political shit. I'm like, this is kind of cool. And then one day he said, and we were in the middle of the Civil War between us and the blacks on the left and the whole feminists. Y'all know that whole story. And then Unc was like, yo, history's repeating itself. And he said, back in the day, there was, you know, I think you said like the 70s or something like that. You said it was like a little bit of a war between them blacks and the Hoteps. And I'm like, oh shit, like this happened before? Like y'all had Hoteps back in the day? So I'm like, because if it happened before, it can happen again. So we can, you know, fix the past mistakes on like where those Hoteps fuck up at. And so we formed up. First it started out as trolling. It was Hotep Lives Matter instead of Black Lives Matter. And then we started realizing this thing started taking off, so we took it more serious, and it transitioned into Hotep Nation. And then Doe and then MG came along, and Doe was young firecracker, sponge. He kept coming and asking questions and wanting to learn and, you know, reading. And then he published his first book. And for me, that was just a huge accomplishment for me. It's like to help somebody come up and then, you know, be from the hood and then be an author. Like, it's fucking unheard of. You know, that's some shit you hear about on MSNBC, but they won't talk about it because he's Hotep. You know? Huge accomplishment for Mr. A.R. Morton. And then, of course, MG, he wrote that blog, got, you know, Whitlock to follow us, and that was just fucking amazing. And, you know, things like that just started co-signing what we were doing. And I'm like, oh, like, we really actually have something here. And, you know, it's just Hotep and build, you know, little by little. And then pieces started coming along. So I was an ignorant fuck when it came to politics. And then one day this white dude was like, yo, you ever checked out Anarchy? I'm like, yo, here these crackers go with this fucking Anarchy shit, man. The fuck? He like, yo, check this out. And then he passed me this book called Anatomy of the State by Murray Rothbard. So I'm like, all right, let me read this shit. And I'm like, oh, this is the shit I be talking about. It's Chad Lemoyne. Clap it up for Chad Lemoyne. So I went down the whole Mises rabbit hole, the whole libertarian rabbit hole, and Chad's telling me, no, you're a libertarian. He told me for like 2 years you're libertarian. I'm like, no, libertarians are just people that are scared to call themselves conservative. He's like, no, that's not it. That's not it. Well, I still think that is it. But but he said you lean more libertarian, and he's right. He's absolutely right. I'm definitely more libertarian. So I learned a lot from Chad. You know, he's a fucking geek. I'm a geek. I grew up, you know, I've always been a geek and a nerd. I just intellectualized swag and kind of embodied it. But, you know, Chad contributed greatly to my knowledge bank. Like, I'm a reader. I just read a lot. You know, I was a young kid. Like I said, I was an only child. All I had to do was read and play with computers and shit like that. So when he passed me the materials, there's nothing for me to read that shit. So I studied up, and he turned me into a beast. I'm telling you right now, like, he opened up a whole fucking Pandora's box, because when I started going down the Rothbard and the Mises and the, obviously, you know, we already had, you know, learned about soul and all that shit. So yeah, so then, you know, Chad came along, and that was dope. And then Halima came along, and that was super dope. And of course we got Trish, that's been like supporting us like for fucking ever. Like, Trish following us was like a big cosign from him. Like, oh, a white woman and like follows us. Holy shit. At first I thought she was a Mexican because of her Avi. I was like, yo, she's white. I think it was like our first Zoom call. I'm like, oh, you're white. You're not a little Mexican lady. She's like, oh, this is fucking cool, man. Like, we got like white people, like, you know what I mean? Like, Yeah, the malls grew out later. But, you know, something I study, you know, I'm a student in history, and I was studying all the past black movements, and I'm like, all right, MLK died because he's a fucking idiot and manipulated. He didn't get wise till his older years. X, well, he got shot because, well, he's a fucking idiot. Don't put this on YouTube, please. This part. I read the autobiography of Malcolm X, and I feel like he was just a really naive individual, believing some of the shit that he was believing. Everybody he ran across, he just fucking believed. But he had an amazing amount of swag and charisma. I don't think I would have been a pull off, because the way he was organizing, like they would send him out someplace, like, yo, start up a mosque here. In like 3 months, the mosque will be popping. And I'm just like, damn, like, you know how much swag you had to do that without the internet back then? So Malcolm was a great leader, but you know, at the end of that book, I noticed he still wanted an all-black movement. And, you know, so when we called ourselves Hotep, the Puritans, like, you know, like the Moors and the Hebrew Israelites, they're very, like, anti-white to a certain extent. And when they saw us, like, y'all fake Hoteps, y'all got white people next to y'all, da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, yeah, that's the secret to fucking success, you idiot. You know, it's like... And there's two things that differentiated us from all the other, you know, quote unquote Hotep groups. One, fucking focus on getting your chicken, man. Get your money up. You know, we had so many poor righteous teachers. Rosa Parks was buried by a Jewish man. Dr. Ben, you know, was poor when he died. Dr. Clark died blind, poor. You know, all these people that we studied from and build our nation off of died poor. So I'm like, you know, one thing we gonna do as a group is we're gonna make sure nobody's poor. And we was to say shit like, what we gonna do for the black community? I'm like, don't you got issues? Don't you got personal issues? You know what I mean? No, we're going to fix your personal issues before we even worry about the rest of the world, because we can't help nobody if we can't help ourselves. So we spent like the first year just making sure, motherfucker, like he said, like, it's like, even if we paid for it, he said he couldn't come, because it's like, nah, like, get your life right. Like, MG used to hit me like, yo, I know I ain't been around, da da da. I'm like, yo, bro, we got this. You got to focus on yourself first. Don't worry about Hotep Nation. Halima came to me, yo, I want to help out. But don't worry, Hotep Nation is good. Like, me and Uncle Hotep got the shit on our back. We good, you know, but we care about the individuals that's a part of this project. And, you know, we really feel like they got to, like, the individuals themselves got to be well off. So that they can give their 100%. I don't want 25% of Hotep. I'd rather you get your life right and then come back when you could be 100%. But your spot good. It's not like when you're like, yo, you ain't been around, so you can't come back. No, that shit's corny, you know? You know, so that's one thing we focused on. We focused on the money. And, you know, Doe Dukes wrote an economics book. I wrote a business book. And we really started, you know, disseminating that information and empowering people. And another thing was white people. You know, I looked at all the other movements and I'm like, what's the difference between them and us? It's like, oh, you ain't got no white people in your group. That's what, you know, marketing is about uniqueness. What are you going to do to differentiate yourself from the competition and the rest of the market? And when we I remember we having a meeting about, should we let white people in? And a couple meetings, yeah. And we were nervous and we didn't know. And Unc like, man, y'all niggas are shook, man. It's cool. Do that shit. Shout out ABL, yeah. But he was right though. Like, yeah. He like, nah, he wasn't with no anti-white shit. And I was like, you know, I was on the edge. I was still trying to figure out, like, you know, can we do that? Is that allowed? He wasn't with it at all, yeah. And we had a meetings and we sold the idea to the rest of the guys, like, nah, it's gonna work out. It's cool, da da da. One thing that helped me resolve that was, you know, a lot of people come to me and say, hey, you guys gonna be infiltrated, you know, and all that other shit. And I'm like, well, again, let's look back in history. Who the fuck was infiltrating black groups? Another nigga. So having an all-black group ain't safe. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it's like, you know, if you're gonna be infiltrated by your own people, you know, you might as well just add, you know, some white people so the black moles that come in stick out even more, you know. But yeah, you know, that was a huge part, man, saying like, look, money and white people. Yeah. Clap it up for yourselves. A pro-black woman with white folks. Like, it's just like a weird concept to a lot of people. And I remember like black folks would come to us, they be like, yo, you got these white folks following you, da 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 da. They don't know what this shit's about. And I would say, hey y'all, hey white folks, what does Hotep mean? And they'd list the principles in their own, and it all came back to the whole thing. Like, they wanted self-empowerment for black people. So they shut the black people up. They're like, damn, these niggas ain't cool. And these white folks really know they're building a black movement for black people. What the fuck is going on here? Right. You know, so, you know, that was it was a big leap for me personally. It was a big leap for us as a company. But Scott Adams said that the biggest untapped resource for black people is white people. This is what Scott Adams said, the creator of Dilbert. And he's absolutely right. Like, if this is a white dominated society, there's a lot of white people that grew up on hip hop. Like, he recite, you know, some NWA. Like, what are you going to say? Oh, you're white, you can't help us out? It's like, that's kind of like ignorance, a lot of people. So, you know, as we matured as a group, I realized that I was trying to connect with people in the Ali Shakur days based upon skin color. So it was like, if you was black, you was good. And I was like, nah, that's terrible, because we started surrounding ourselves with some really fucking backstabbing ass people just off of fucking skin color, you know? So I said, let's change this to a mindset thing, and let me put my mind out there, and whoever, whatever color, whatever country you come from, if you down, you got this mindset. And then we started building a group of people based upon a mindset, and then the group became stronger. And so here we are. Thaddeus Russell popped up.